Welcome to Pumping Python. My name is Jacob Itegboje, and this is how to test that an exception is raised. When an error happens in Python, it raises an exception which breaks execution of the program. This means that nothing past the line of code which caused one will run. It is useful because there's a problem that has to be solved for the program to continue as expected. It can be a pain when it causes it to stop early. What if I wanted to run even with errors? I might want to give messages to the user who does not care about or understand the details of the error. Exception handling is a way to deal with this. It allows programs to make a decision when one happens. Time to write some code. I will open up the Explorer, then with Control and tilde on the keyboard, open up a terminal. On Windows without subsystem Linux, /make python tdd.ps1 exceptions. On the other operating systems, it will be /make python tdd.sh. Exceptions as the name of the project. When I hit enter to run it, it makes the files and folders that I needed, installs packages, then runs the first test. When I Control Option click on the file name, it opens up in the editor and I can change true to false to make the test pass. I have a warning for the spelling of the class name. I'll change this to a capital E to make it cap words, and the warning goes away. I'll change this test from test_failure to test_module_not_found_error_in_tests. Then come down to the assert false, change it to import does_not_exist. The terminal shows a ModuleNotFoundError. No module named does not exist. Hashtag ModuleNotFoundError in the list of exceptions encountered. I could make the does not exist or py file to solve this problem, but I want to catch or handle the error instead. To do that, I'll use the assertRaises method from the unittest or test case class. It checks that the code within its context raises the exception it is given. Here's what that looks like. Enter before the failing line, then add with self.assertRaises parentheses ModuleNotFoundError, a colon at the end. Come down to the next line with Control or Command right square bracket on the keyboard, move it to the right. And the test passes, showing that this line of code raises this exception. Come down to that last line, enter twice, backspace twice. DEF test_catching_name_error_in_tests. Parentheses self a colon at the end. Enter after the colon does_not_exist. The terminal shows a name error. Name does not exist is not defined. I will add this to the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag NameError. Then enter twice before the failing line to add with self.assertRaises parentheses NameError colon at the end. Come down to the next line, move it to the right. And the test passes. Enter twice, backspace twice. DEF test underscore catching underscore attribute underscore error underscore in underscore tests parentheses self colon at the end. Enter after the colon source.exceptions.does underscore not underscore exist. The terminal shows a name error. Name source is not defined. I'll go to the top of the file, hit enter before the import statement, then add import source.exceptions. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.exceptions has no attribute, does not exist. Hashtag attribute error in the list of exceptions encountered. Then I'll open up the source folder, grab exceptions.py to put on the left side of the editor. Close the Explorer. The file is empty. I get the attribute error because I'm trying to get something that does not exist from something that does exist. Enter before the failing line, add with self.assertRaises parentheses attribute error colon at the end. Then come down to the failing line with Control or Command right square bracket on the keyboard, move it to the right. And the test passes. Enter twice, backspace twice. DEF test underscore catching underscore type underscore error underscore in underscore tests parentheses self colon at the end. Enter after the colon source.exceptions.function underscore name parentheses quotes argument. This gives me an attribute error. Module source.exceptions has no attribute function name. I'll add it to the file. Function underscore name. And I get a name error. Name function name is not defined. I'll point it to none to define it, which gives me a type error. Non-type object is not callable. Hashtag type error in the list of exceptions encountered. We'll then go back to the failing line, enter before it, add with self.assertRaises parentheses type error colon at the end. Come down to the next line, move it to the right. And the test passes. Even if I kept going and made this a function, say I added DEF function name parentheses colon, enter, return, remove the equal sign, none. The terminal still shows green because this function call does not match the function signature. The definition does not allow an input, but the test sent one. So I still have a type error. If I added a parameter, say I call it argument, then I get an assertion error, type error not raised, because the function call now matches the function signature. I will undo that change to get back the type error. Back in the test, enter twice after the last line, backspace twice. DEF test underscore catching underscore index underscore error underscore in underscore tests parentheses self colon at the end. Enter after the colon, a underscore list equals sign, square brackets, 1, 2, 3, quotes n. Enter to go to the next line, a underscore list, square brackets. To get an item from a list, I use its index. In Python, the first item has an index of 0. I'll put that in the square brackets here. No issues, the terminal still shows green. The last item in the list has an index of the total number of items minus 1. That would be 3 in this case. Change that 0 to 3. Still green for 0 to 3, no issues. But when I do 4 for a fifth element that does not exist, the terminal shows an index error. List index out of range. I'll add this to the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag index error. Then enter before the failing line to add with self.assertRaises parentheses index error, a colon at the end. Come down to the next line and with control or command right square bracket, move it to the right. And the test passes. Enter backspace, a underscore list square brackets -1. I can use negative numbers to index a list. -1 here points to the last item in the list. Think reading from right to left. The first item in the list will be negative the total number of items. That's -4 in this case. Still no issues, the terminal shows green, but when I do -5 for an element that does not exist, I get an index error. List index out of range. Enter before the failing line, go back to add with self.assertRaises parentheses index error colon at the end. Come here to the next line, move it to the right. And the test passes. Now it looks like this second assertRaises is a duplicate, especially because if I remove it, the test still passes. But I promise it is not. I will undo that change. At the end of the video, I'll show why this is not a duplicate. Stick around. Enter twice, backspace twice, def test underscore catching underscore key underscore error underscore in underscore tests parentheses self a colon at the end. Enter after the colon, curly braces, quotes, key, colon, quotes, value. To get a value from a dictionary for key, it's square brackets and the name of the key. When the key exists, no issues. When I use one that does not exist, the terminal shows KeyError with the name that I gave. Hashtag KeyError in the list of exceptions encountered. Then enter before the failing line, go back to add with self.assertRaises parentheses KeyError colon at the end. Come down to the next line, move it to the right. And the test passes. Enter twice, backspace twice. def test underscore catching underscore 0 underscore division underscore error underscore in underscore tests parentheses self a colon at the end. Enter. This happened in the how to make a calculator video. Any number divided by 0, the terminal shows zero division error, division by 0. I'll add this to the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag ZeroDivisionError. Then enter before the failing line to add with self.assertRaises parentheses ZeroDivisionError colon at the end. Come down to the next line to move it to the right. And the test passes. Enter twice, backspace twice. DEF test underscore catching underscore exceptions underscore in underscore tests parentheses self a colon at the end. Enter after. I can make any exception happen at any time by using a raise statement. Raise exception. The terminal shows exception. This is the class that all the exceptions encountered so far are derived from, or they inherit from. Its mother, if you will, or their mother, if you will. I can do this with any exception. If I said raise assertion error, the terminal shows assertion error. Undo. Enter before the failing line, then add with self.assertRaises parentheses exception colon at the end. Come down to the next line and with Control or Command right square bracket move it to the right. And the test passes. To review, the assertRaises method checks that the code within its context raises the exception it is given. Now, since exception is the mother class, I can use it to catch its children. If I said exception instead of zero division error, the test still passes. I'll undo that. Same thing if I did it with any of the other exceptions. I'll do KeyError, exception. Still green, undo that. One last time with IndexError, exception. Still green. The problem with doing this is if I have multiple lines in the assertRaises, I will not know which of the lines raised the exception, and I will not know what exception was raised because this catches all of them. It is better to be specific. From the Zen of Python, explicit is better than implicit. I am going to undo this change. Also, this does not work with siblings or cousins. If I did ModuleNotFoundError instead of IndexError, the terminal still shows IndexError because it's not a ModuleNotFoundError. I'll undo that as well. As promised, this second assertRaises is not a duplicate. I'll remove it to show why. The test still passes even though it's not there. When I add a raise statement in between both lines, I expect to see the exception in the terminal, but that does not happen. It looks like the assertRaises exits once it encounters the index error. If I move that raise statement to right above the first line, it shows up in the terminal. Once again, it is better to be specific. I'll undo the change. As a rule of thumb, I write one line of code for one exception handler. That way, I know which line causes which error. All the tests are passing, so I will close out the terminal. I ran tests To show exceptions, I have a way to handle them in tests, and I ran into the following: assertion error, module not found error, name error, attribute error, type error, index error, key error, and zero division error. Would you like to test handling exceptions in programs? I will see you in the next one.